We're just getting started, but you had that mostly because of playoff experience.
Yes.
Even after the Thunder finished with the best record in the better conference.
Yes.
Are they still being underrated?
Not by me anymore.
Okay.
Not
anymore.
By me anymore.
You add any more. Okay.
No. Because I look, we've had some paper lions over the last couple of years. Utah Jazz, best record in the league. Didn't go anywhere. Boston Celtics, Milwaukee Bucks, any number of teams that have had great regular season records and then didn't live up to it in the postseason. But these Oklahoma City Thunder and what they showed me last night, going up against a more experienced Dallas Mavericks team, I discounted what they did against the New Orleans Pelicans because I just thought the matchups were just so lopsided. A little bit like the Boston Celtics against the Miami Heat. But they're not scared.
No.
These young boys
are not
scared, and they're not. Look, this is a team that hadn't been in the playoffs for 4 years. So you can do all of that. We're running up and down, and we can get things done during the regular season. But they showed me a fearlessness in this game one that is convincing me that the series might be a little bit more different than I expected. I'm going to stay with Dallas for now.
All right.
But
bad move.
Well, I need a little bit more than just a game one on your home floor against a clearly hobbled Luka Dončić. I mean, that may be the difference maker in this series. But overall, like, they're for real. And I think they're going to be for real for a while. So if Dallas does win the series, it's going to certainly be a tough out.
You know, you asked the question, Skip, underrated. I don't think they're underrated. People just you don't really see them like that, right? I mean, even in the regular season, what do they get? A handful of nationally televised games. This is, you know, when you look at the series prior to this, it's like, okay, we know what they were going to do against the New Orleans Pelicans, so we didn't really...
So under-publicized, under-recognized, under-watched, under something.
All of the above.
Right.
But
Underappreciated.
Yeah.
Underappreciated because of that. But now, they're one of two games, literally every time they play now. Then eventually there'll be one-on-one games, and then so you'll get a chance.
I'll buy that. Last night might have been sort of a coming out party for them where the world sort of said,
because I actually sat and watched from beginning to end because I was interested in to see exactly what are we going to see here, and then obviously we got what we got. I picked them to win the series to begin with. I felt like, you know, when people talk about experience, once again, I want to remind you the same thing I remind Paul Pierce about, I remind you about, Rick. It's not like the Dallas Mavericks are winning championships.
Yes, agreed.
They may have made it to the playoffs.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But they're not winning. If this was Golden State they were up against, then the experience thing, it's validated. It's like, okay, same thing with Minnesota and Denver. As I said, Denver won the championship last year, but they didn't win 2 of the last 3 or 4 of the last 3. You know, it's not one of those situations. So, you know, when you talk about the team hasn't been to the postseason in the last 5 years or whatever that number is, the organization hasn't been. Because this is a different team. There's new players. They're young. Now, all of a sudden, you get this fire. And they feel good about where they're at, whether they're at home or on the road. Obviously, home helps them with the crowd behind them, and they get a real experience at what the playoffs is all about. The problem for Dallas, in my opinion, is Game 2's at home, too, now. And you still have a hobbled Luka, if we want to use that as the reason he's shooting at a low clip right now, if we want to use that excuse. But now you run the risk of going home at 0-2. And when you go home at 0-2, you got to even the score, because if they still want on your home court, you down 3-1 going back into that same environment that got you down 2-0. So I like what I'm seeing out the Thunder, Skip. I expect for them to win it all in terms of against the Milwaukee Bucks, and then we'll see what happens if they get past them and go on. I mean, against the Dallas Mavericks, they get past them and move on to the Minnesota Timberwolves.
All right. You and I picked the Thunder for very different reasons because you're not going to buy into Luka until he shows you at a higher and higher level he can do this.
How could I buy into a guy shooting 33% from the floor, another 11% from 3, and 71% from the free throw line? 3 points three-point attempts he was supposed to be getting better at.
He did during the regular season.
He was supposed to be getting better at it.
Well, he
but
did.
Now we're looking at something different. Free throws as well, Skip. He was getting better at it, but we look at something different.
A reason, maybe the reason I picked the Oklahoma City Thunder was Luka. I told you, first of all, he ain't right. We're going back 5 games now against the Clippers. He sprained his knee. And how many NFL quarterbacks have we seen be out 4 to 6 weeks with a sprained knee? I think he has a legit injury. I don't know that because nobody probably knows that except that one human being.
He probably does have a legit injury. I would never even remotely even come close to thinking that somebody is milking an injury. But what I would say to you, Skip, before you even go, is yes, he's injured, but he dropped on the Clippers. What did he drop? 30-something or whatever it was?
Yeah.
So you ain't that damn injured?
The problem is, over the last 4 games since he did suffer the injury, from 3, he's 5 of 35.
Yeah.
That's 14%. That won't work. You're going to lose some games. You can't score enough.
Before the injury, he wasn't knocking down threes.
Well, he did during the regular season. He was career high. But, okay, I got you. So we start with that, but then we go to this Thunder team. So the flip side of you is I watched just about every game they played this year because I fell in love with them, and I am from there, but I didn't fall in love with the 2012 team, the Baby Thunder, as I used to call them, and they had 3 future MVPs on their roster. 3.
Well, you didn't like 2 of them personally.
Okay, I didn't, and that is the truth. And I was the biggest KD fan, but Russ started shooting more shots per game than Kevin Durant, and they started to quietly clash over it, and you know the rest of that story. It was just hard for me to wrap my arms around them. And by the way, just quick point of order, if you remember Game 1 of the 2012 Finals against LeBron and Dwayne and Bosh, remember, at Oklahoma City, it was a tour de force, and they won that game. The Baby Thunder won it 105-94. And then guess what happened? The Heatles happened, and the Heatles won 4 straight games, and that was all for the Baby Thunder. And that was really the apogee of them. You know, that was their zenith, right? That was their high point. That was it. From there on, they began to teeter and go downhill, and then Harden winds up in Houston. You know the rest of the story. But the point was, I caution the Oklahoma City fans, you did do that back in 2012, and then guess what happened? So you're not up against LeBron James and Dwayne Wade.
Here's the 2 things that's the difference there, Skip, for me. You just mentioned they're not up against those guys, but also this team in OKC, it seems like togetherness.
There's a different vibe.
It's just a different pregame. I'm watching them in pregame. They out there acting like, some rookies.
They're having fun.
Yeah, they're having fun.
And I think it's legit fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so I told you, the best thing about them is the postgame interview, they won't go solo. If it's SGA and the network requests, they all get around there. They're all arm in arm, and they're having fun. And it's not faked. It's not forced. It's real.
Yeah.
And they do bark like dogs, and it's just silly, stupid stuff. But they're doing it, and it works because they believe they got that dog in them.
Yeah.
So, Keyshawn, I bring this up, seems like every day on the show, one of the greatest coaches ever, one that you had the privilege and honor of playing for. Bill Parcells always said, you are what your record says you are. The Thunder were the best team in the West for a reason, and I'm starting to say, are they just who they were all year? Is it possible that 57 and 25 is exactly who they are? It was the best in a loaded West in which Steph Curry and Draymond and Clay were the 10 seed, right? That they finished first, maybe by hook or crook because Denver blew a game at San Antonio, but they did. And I watched them all year, and I kept thinking, are they legit? And then I would turn off the TV late at night, and I'd say, I think they're legit. They're well coached, and they have beautiful chemistry because, look, Shea he's obviously the star. He was an MVP candidate. I was making the case he should have won the MVP because of the rise of that team and what was on his shoulders with that team. But the point is, here's the irony. They led the league in three-point shooting, and they did it again to the Thunder last night. And guess who probably their worst three-point shooter is? It's their star. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is 35% from 3. He ranks 13th on their team. So of guys who've shot enough to qualify, he's the worst. The other guys...
still good.
Okay, but it's okay, but it's not what the rest of them are. Because as a team, they shot 39% from three because all the rest of them can shoot the eyes out. And all of a sudden, you saw last night, what did they do? Well,
45%.
They go 46% and 45 if I round up, and they make 16 of 35. So Dallas also shoots 35, but makes only 12. Well, that's 4 times 3. That's a 12-point differential from the three-point line, and that's kind of what happened in the game. All right? So they do that, and then they steal the ball at the highest level in the league. They led the league in steals. They ranked 4th in team defense. So they're doing it 2 ways. They're shooting. They're like Boston, except they don't take nearly as many threes as Boston because they rank 16th in attempts. Boston ranked 1st in attempts, so obviously 1st in makes. But Boston lives and dies by the 3 even more than the Thunder live and die by it. But the Thunder will shoot you out of the gym if you let them get on a roll, which is what happened last night. And if we can go to the flashpoint quickly of the game, Kyrie makes one, and I thought, because it was, what time is it? It's in the 3rd quarter. Kyrie made a shot at 7:25 on a sort of semi-break. Luka kicked it to Kyrie, and he just pulls right up and steps into it, and that cut it to 1. And at that point, I thought, now we're going to see what they're made of. And guess what they did? Daigneault calls timeout, and he takes out Josh Giddey, and he puts in Isaiah Joe, who you can argue is their best three-point shooter, who immediately makes a 3 that turns the tide back to Oklahoma City. And then if we can see what they did over the next 4 minutes.
They went on a 12-2 run or something
here
like
they
that?
go on this run, and they're about to make, there's Isaiah Joe. That was a big shot and a good shot. And then, whoops, guess who? Lou Dort, who can play defense and offense. He can shoot threes. And then here they go again, and there's the breakaway dunk by Jalen. And now here we go again. Guess who? Chet drains a 3, and he's only 7 feet 1 inches tall. And then SGA, boom. And
is there anybody who didn't hit a 3?
Boom. And that's it. That's that run, and it took 3.5 minutes, Keyshawn, to your point. And all of a sudden, I look up, and Oklahoma City's back up by 12.
When it got down to 1, I got up and went to the kitchen and came back, and they was up by 12. I was like, what happened?
Okay, that happened because the Thunder can strike like lightning. That's what they do. That's who they are, especially, obviously, at home, because they can shoot the 3. And with Luka hobbled, and Kyrie, I thought maybe Kyrie would just say, give me the ball and get out of the way, but it didn't really happen from that point forward. And maybe that's what's going to have to start happening for the Mavericks to regain control of this, is that Kyrie's going to have to take back over.
I thought Chet played aggressive. Even though, he's a slim reaper, he played aggressive, and he wasn't tentative. I mean, he was out there trying to battle, whether it was underneath the boards, whether it was putbacks, whether it was coming through the lane, dunking the ball. Dude just... I don't know, them dudes are so long, man. It's just hard to figure out who could slow them down.
But he's not playing his age either. Like he was, as the season progressed, the regular season, I thought he faded a little bit. He looked a little bit fatigued, which is understandable, playing his first full season and played nearly every game, I believe. And so that was my question, was from the inside, outside of Chet, they don't really have any size. They don't have any rim protection. I think Josh Giddey is their next biggest player, or Arkansas Jalen Williams. And so I thought that was going to be a factor. I thought P.J. Washington getting into early foul trouble was an issue for the Dallas Mavericks because he's their only stretch 5 or stretch big now that Maxi Kleber is injured. So that's why I still give Dallas a chance of shifting this series a little bit, because I want to see if P.J. Washington can stay on the floor. That changes the dynamic a lot. But to your point about these Thunder and about them being very different from the 2012-ish
or whatever.
That squad, everybody has a role. They have confidence, but they don't have ego. That's not getting in the way. You had Russ, KD, and James Harden all sort of battling for where do we fit in this constellation, right?
But when in the history of this league have you had 3 future MVPs on the same roster?
Understood.
Are you kidding?
Understood.
I mean, I just don't think it's ever, maybe I missed one, but I can't imagine, because one of them's coming off the bench at that point, James.
I mean, the first thing I thought of was the Boston Celtics when they brought those guys together, but Ray Allen really wouldn't fit into that.
Like MVP of the league?
Yes.
You just don't
But they were also young.
They were.
And they weren't there yet.
Yeah.
And these guys are young, but they all clearly look at SGA as the leader, and everybody falls into line behind that. And so there's none of that struggle in terms of who's getting shots, who's getting minutes. And that's really powerful for this team. And I think, Keyshawn, I thought you made a great point about who are they going up against? Like, they're not having to knock off an established champion or a formidable postseason team. And you normally don't have teams that haven't been to the playoffs in this long, that are this young, that have home court advantage. So you get to start these series at home with what in Oklahoma City is a very rabid crowd.
It is.
And people across the country, once they get to know this team, are going to fall in love with it. That's already happened in Oklahoma City. And it's a very easy team to fall in love with.
It's college rah-rah going on.
It is exactly
It feels
right.
like a college town team.
Yep.
Yeah.
See, when I think about teams that go up against championship caliber teams and knock them off of perennial champions, I think about teams like Michael Jordan's first championship against the Lakers.
Well, or having to go through Detroit.
But then having some scars to go through all of those Eastern Conference teams that were beating him up so long, so often. Or you think about Golden State, when they won their first championship, they still had to go through
San Antonio.
They had to go through teams in organizations that wasn't winning or in the mix on a consistent basis. That won't be the case with Minnesota and OKC right now. I think they're on the way to building that foundation like those other teams that have gone on to win 3 or 4 or whatever those numbers are.
You know what the distinction is when you have to go through those veteran, proven teams, they are not going to beat themselves.
No.
You have to beat them. And if I look at the Denver Nuggets in that the first game, right? In the first 2 games, I could make a case that the Denver Nuggets beat themselves as much as Minnesota beat them.
Okay.
And that is not what we're used to seeing from championship caliber teams.
Exactly.
And the Dallas Mavericks in last night, OKC was great. I don't want to take anything away from it, but Dallas didn't play up to what we expect them to play. Maybe it's because Dončić is hurt.
But you know, when you get punched, Rick, sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it doesn't. And when you get punched, sometimes you just say, I don't want to swing back. I just want to get out of here.
Yeah.
And clearly, they got punched early by OKC. And even though they cut the deficit down to 1, and OKC said, you know what, I'm going to come with a left hook.
Yeah.
Bam. And then they just shut it down
True.
to the point where they emptied the bench with 6-7 minutes to go in the game. They started, it was like, we surrender.
Waved the flag early.
We surrender.
All right. What shocked me the most was these Thunder averaged they ranked 16th in rebounding. So to your point, Chet's still real light in the back pockets.
Yeah.
And he may always be. He and Wemby, I don't know how much weight they can put on, how much muscle they can put on. They're just long and tall.
I really don't think he's going to get much.
You're probably right.
Actually, I don't think you want to with as up and down as the game is. I think you run into injury issues.
Stat of the night. Oklahoma City wins the boards last night 52-39. They win points in the paint 40-32. And I'm saying, how could they have done that? Well, they all rose up because listen, Dallas they bullied the Clippers because Gafford and PJ just attacked the glass. And Gafford played big last night. He blocked Chet one time. Chet came right back and hit a 3 on him. That's what Chet does. He's not afraid. He doesn't cower. He'll come right back and say, well, I can do this. I can shoot this 3 like it's a free throw.
I was shocked that he got that shot blocked.
Yeah.
Dude was like 9 feet tall. How did you get it?
Okay, but he's going the wrong way into the strength of Gafford, and he just ate it. But it didn't bother him.
He totally ate it.
Yeah, okay.
That's a big thing, though, is you get your shot blocked, and then you come right back. It doesn't faze you at all for a young player. That's very impressive.
So I wondered if the Mavericks went back to their hotel last night and had a Nuggets moment, as in Nuggets versus T-Wolves, where the Nuggets had to wake up after one game and say, wait a second.
Yeah.
You know, we're up against it here. I wondered if the Mavericks went home, went back to the hotel, and Luka and Kyrie would sit back and say, God, these guys are for real.
No, they already saw them, though, Skip, this year. They beat them 3 out of 4. I mean, 3 out of 4. OKC beat them 3 out of 4 tries.
One time in Dallas beat them 146 to 111, just ran them off the floor.
No, I understand it, but that might have been a game where I don't even know what part of the season that game was, but when you have lost to a team 3 times out of 4, you know they can play.
But then you might think it's playoffs. It's too the moment will be too big for them, but it wasn't.
But see, again, there you go with the moment too big. That's what people.
Well, they just haven't done this at all. They haven't done it at all.
No,
I mean, this is all brand new territory.
Yeah.
It's understandable that they might half step a little bit, never having seen this.
But you can tell, like Skip said, you can tell through if you're watching them at all a little bit. Certain teams, you can tell if the team is for real or not, because like Skip said, as my coach would say, you are what your records say you are. You don't win 57 games because you roll out of the bed.
No.
You've done something right along the way, even though you may have lost to the Lakers in a series, or you may have lost to certain teams. You've done something right to win 57 games.
But I will go back to what I said at the beginning. Like, of late, we have seen teams that have had the best record in the regular season. Utah Jazz being number one example.
But were the Utah,
and they couldn't live up to it.
With Donovan Mitchell and company, were they really for real, though?
No, they had, look, they had flaws that in certain matchups you could exploit. And that was the problem, is that as soon as you hit that flaw, that undermined the confidence of the team.
Well, they had what is now the 4-time Defensive Player of the Year,
Rudy Gobert.
So they had both those things going on, right?
Yeah.
And it didn't get them very far.
No.
All right, so just for the record, Game 2 in Oklahoma City, the odds makers are just saying, nope, it's the Thunder, because they're 4.5-point favorites. So they're fairly significant favorites. So the people who should know are saying legit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All right.
Can't argue with that at this point.
Shocker. Okay. Should Jamal Murray have been suspended? That has become a good question. Thanks for watching, Undisputed fans. Do you want more highlights from the show? Make sure to click that subscribe button for all the exclusive content from Undisputed.